the price of rum in the budget. No.
Fisherfolk had their livelihoods threatened when thousands of dead fish began washing up along the shoreline of Mosquito Creek. Environmental activists blamed it on chemicals in water and said fish from the Gulf of Paria were unsafe to eat. Here's Mahalia Joseph as she looks back at the impact of the Gulf of Paria fish kill.
President of the Debate Penal Action Committee, Edward Moody, and Gary Aboud, Secretary of Fishermen and Friends of the Sea, called on the Institute of Marine Affairs and the Environmental Management Authority to investigate the cause of the fish kill. But when the IMA, EMA and the Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries blamed it on trawling, the FFOS did their own investigations and began blaming the fish kill on chemicals in the water. But Claxton Bay fishermen sought to correct such statements. They explained that it was simply discarded fish.
What really happens when the fishermen go out on sea, at about 4 o'clock they set drift net. Let's say that the drift net been sorted out and retrieved back at about 10 o'clock in the night. The catches with small catfish, herring and whatsoever that goes in under the sundown would apparently start to spoil, so it have no sale, so that they will have to come and clear the net, shake it up. Whatever cannot sell, they dump it.
Both dismissed the theory and added that a thorough investigation needed to be done. After his own investigation, Mr. Aboud blamed the fish kill on Corexit, an oil displacement which he said had been used in the past by state-owned oil company Petrotrin to clean up oil spills.
We believe that the lesions are being caused by the Corexit. This area where all of the dead fish are is the exact same area where the Corexit was used. If it were that there were other influences, then it is highly coincidental that the other influences should occur in the same zone, the Petrotrin red zone, which Petrotrin had barred off and prohibited anyone from fishing.
Fishermen's sales weren't doing too well, and some took matters into their own hands and conducted a taste test to prove the fish was safe for consumption.
The pelican eating the same herring. The pelican eating the same mullet, and they does not die. You want me to get some seawater and drink it in front of you? And I does not die?
They called on Gary Aboud to renounce his claims. Fullerton fishermen also grew frustrated as they said the actions by others were affecting their livelihood and they called for compensation. Claxton Bay fisherman Dale Jagannath thought after losing his job at ArcelorMittal, fishing would be his savior.
Well, I worked there for like 18 years, and after they closed down the plant, they never pay me no severance, no pension, or we fall back on fishing because this is where I grew up. And right now, the fish not selling because Mr. Gary Aboud letting the nation know the fish is poison. He's not coming with no evidence saying, all right, we find this in the fish, so we can stop eating the fish. And I understand the EMA saying it's okay to eat the fish, so there's a pulling and talking with Gary and the EMA because poor people suffering. And I understand babies crying, babies have to get milk. And all of them high and mighty, and we the poor people suffering. The councillor for the area never come here. We don't know who is the councillor. You understand? Ask any one of them fishermen here, who's the councillor for the area? They cannot tell you nothing because they never see the person. They don't know who is the person. No help, right, wrong. So what the poor people going to do? Start a revolution? What we going to do? What we going to do? We don't have an income coming. Children suffering, people have to go to school. This man has books to buy. This man has 8 children to mine.
But in August, investigations concluded that the fish kill in South Trinidad was not linked to any poisoning. The Environmental Management Authority said Kariri was only able to detect total petroleum hydrocarbons in catfish samples. The findings also show that no Corexit was detected in other fish species, which included herring, salmon and stingray. But tests conducted by Kariri on water sediment and fish samples have ruled out Corexit as being linked to the dead fish, as no compounds matching Corexit were found. But even after these findings, nothing changed. So fishermen of Orange Valley went to the Gulf to collect samples for testing, hoping to prove Fishermen and Friends of the Sea Secretary Gary Aboud was wrong. Mr. Aboud said the group was sorry about all that was happening with the fisherfolk, but he said the safety of the population was more important. On August 25th, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley had announced that $1 million worth of assistance will be made available to fishermen and others affected by the recent oil spill and fish kill events along the southwest shoreline. However, the Prime Minister stressed that this was not a matter of the government providing compensation, explaining that liability, particularly with regard to the oil spill, had to be determined. I'm Mahalia Joseph, looking back at a story of serious impact on the environment in 2016.
With the economy on the ropes, the government had to look at ways to cut costs, and many cast their eyes to the Government Assistance for Tuition Expense program. Consultations and committee meetings were held, and many students held their breath until an announcement was finally made in August 2016. Apart from the long-awaited GATE announcement, there were other pronouncements about education that had to be made. Rishi Harinanan looks back at 2016's impact on education.
All year, there was speculation that the government was looking to stop the Government Assistance for Tuition Expense GATE program. However, on August 3rd, the Minister of Education cleared the air on the matter, announcing several changes. GATE will no longer be free for all citizens. From 2017 and beyond, some students will be required to pay 25% of their tuition fees.
Effective August 2017, students whose household income falls below $10,000 per month will be eligible for 100% funding. This will be determined by means testing. Where the household income is above $10,000, students will be required to pay 25% of their tuition fees. Where the household income is above $20,000 per month, students will be required to pay 50% of their tuition fees.
There were no details as to how the means test will be conducted. A decision was also taken to discontinue the funding for new students in the medical program at St. George's University in Grenada. As the minister explained, the cost is much higher than the cost of funding at any other institution. Another change was that students over the age of 50 years old will no longer be eligible for GATE.
If our economy is shrinking, obviously everybody must make a sacrifice. It was the view of Cabinet that persons over the age of 50 would have already been employed, and therefore they would be in a better position to contribute towards their education.
He also announced that funding for postgraduate degrees will be available to students whose programs are in alignment with the country's developmental needs, effective from August 2017. Minister Garcia said the government is expected to save $100 million in the first year and $200 million the following year with the new changes. Only accredited institutions will be GATE funded. Now, away from tertiary education, over $220 million were approved to contractors for the resumption of stalled school projects before the end of the year. However, that didn't convince parents to stop protesting. In the months to come, there were protests from the Union Presbyterian Primary School, Lafayette Roman Catholic School, Montrose Vedic School, Reform Hindu School, among others. And at one point, the Minister of Education walked away from protesting parents and claimed protests were politically motivated. Mr. Garcia said parents have encouraged disrespect for authority.
Students are being encouraged to hold placards and demonstrate outside the offices of the Ministry of Education or outside of their schools. In other words, students, children are being encouraged to disrespect Ministry of Education officials. And that is a result of the upbringing that those children are being exposed to by their parents. I make no apologies in saying this.
As it relates to school violence in 2016, the minister expressed his disappointment. He said parents must be held accountable.
This type of behavior does not occur in a vacuum. It has its foundation in the family and the attitude of parents and the support of parents. I am sure if those students knew that if they went home and they told their parents of their behavior and that their parents would have scorned on that behavior, they would not have exhibited that type of behavior. But apparently, students are being allowed to do what they want.
In December, the minister announced that some repairs to 40 schools across the country would cost some $34 million. But there were serious concerns whether the works will be carried out in time before the new school term in January. So what else happened in the education sector? Well, government reduced the amount of money for the school feeding program by $15 million. In 2015, it was $250 million. In 2016, $235 million. I'm Rishi Harinanan, and that was a look back at 2016 Impact on Education.
There's more to come in our 2016's Impact. Stay with us.